The mission is simple: to help high achievers naturally eliminate emotional and physical obstacles so they can optimize their life for higher achievement. Welcome. You have just entered the Genesis Zone. Good day and welcome to the Genesis Zone show. This is Dr. Brian Brown. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here. You could be anywhere else in the world. You've chosen to be with us here today and you're not going to regret it. I can assure you of that. We have an amazing guest today in our ongoing Wellness Warriors series. Today, we're joined by Melissa Jones, AKA MJ. She's an inspiring girls empowerment coach and 22-year veteran teacher with over 22,000 hours of experience in helping girls. Melissa is a founder of Girls Positivity Club, which is an empowering environment where girls are motivated to learn daily positive habits so they can feel confident in who they are, develop healthy connections with other girls, and have the tools they need to live their best life. MJ has shared her knowledge of empowerment and positive habits for personal growth in media outlets such as Fox, CBS, NBC, CW, Forbes, Minch, Authority Magazine, and Thrive Global. In this Overcomer segment, MJ will be sharing her experiences in the area of developing positive habits for transformational living. Welcome, MJ. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing well. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. We're so glad to have you. Before we get started, I think our audience would love to know you just a little bit more. Can you tell us a little bit of your childhood backstory? Just where you came from, where you grew up, what growing up for you was like, and let's just kind of go from there.
Sounds great. Yeah, so I am from, Indiana is where I live, and Indianapolis is really where I grew up, and most people identify with the city since it's larger. And I would say that growing up, I grew up on a street called Mertz Drive, and I still remember it until I was 8, and everything really changed from there. So Mertz Drive was like, in my mind, perfect. I had best friends. I had a girl across the street that we played in her treehouse, and I had my dad had built me a playhouse, and I had a swing set and a sandbox and a pool and just all the things that a kid would love. And I just remember feeling so carefree living there, and just nothing but happiness. And my parents started noticing that the neighborhood started changing. So I'm pretty sure there was a sex offender that moved in down the road. Now, looking back, my parents sheltered me from that, but the neighborhood just started changing in their eyes. And so they thought it'd be better to move to a suburb. And so we moved this summer that I was 8, turning 9, to a suburb in Indy on the south side. And that is really where everything changed for me. In my previous school, still remember it was called Abraham Lincoln. I was I had friends. I just had this inner peace and just felt very good about who I was up until I was 8. And something weird happened when I moved. So the neighborhood had very few girls. It had one girl who lived near, and she was a tomboy. And I wasn't super coordinated as a kid. Like, I did things outside and played sports always and just did different things, but I wasn't really the star, athlete or anything like that. And so I still like to play with Barbies, and I still like to do kind of, in some kids' eyes, I guess, babyish type of things. I loved it. And so the girl that I met, she was nice, but she hung out with all the boys, and they mostly did athletic things. And so I felt kind of out of place there. And then I started kind of hiding the things that I liked to do because it didn't really fit in with the norm of my neighborhood. And then as I went to school, being the new kid, I just did not feel welcomed. And I did make friends, but I just did not, for some reason, feel that inner confidence that I had at my previous school. And I cried a lot. I remember just crying, and then people thought I was a crybaby. And so then I got kind of teased for that. And I got teased for the way that I walked. And
Mm,
because I walked on my tippy toes for a while, and, you know, my Achilles wasn't properly formed because of a walker that my mom put me in when I was a young child. And anyway, that they don't even sell anymore. But,
right.
you know, so it's like great things when we were like growing up in the 70s and 80s. And yeah, so throughout school, I just struggled, you know, just with just that move changed me. And I just created this doubt. And I think really looking back, that is where I started feeling not good enough and
Wow.
not like I was like everyone else. And I've done a lot of just soul searching about that. That's where I've pinpointed that it started for me. And I really, although I had very loving parents, very supportive, divorced family, but healthy divorced family. Like my biological dad would knock on the door and then just walk right in and be like, hey, you know, just very friendly. And my stepdad
Mm.
raised me from the time I was a baby. So he was my dad. So I always grew up with, you know, two dads. And, but I just, yeah, for some reason that move just really shook me.
So up until age 8, this surreal, like ideal dream childhood, both
Mm-hmm.
at school and in your neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
just very supportive. And then once you
Yeah.
moved to a suburb, things changed. The neighborhood wasn't the same. You were kind of isolated
Mm-hmm.
because you were one of the few
Mm-hmm.
um, girly girls, and so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. And did you not make any connections at school either? What was that
I
like?
did. Yeah, I did. It was mainly just with girls would reach out to me, but they were typically not the popular girls or not the girls that had the most friends or anything like
Mm,
that. And not that, I mean, I know now as an adult looking back, like that doesn't even matter. But in a kid's eyes, when the cool kids don't like you, or they
yeah,
think you're weird, or they see you as an outsider or different, you kind of overcompensate and do things that maybe to get their acceptance that aren't really
right.
you, and then it seems unauthentic to them, and so then it doesn't, you know, it doesn't match up. And so I think I was trying to just do things like, I don't know, join in their activities that they liked, not necessarily like in mine, or worry about what they were doing at recess,
Mm,
where I wanted to jump rope, but I was scared I was going to fall in front of them and they make fun of me or something like that. I
gotcha.
mean, yeah, so just specific things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, totally get it. So let's move through into high school years, early
Yeah.
college years. How did things transpire over those coming formative years as you were growing up?
Yeah. So I would say high school, I met a small group of friends. I mean, there were friends that I had developed obviously throughout school
Mhm,
who liked me for me and who were fun. And they were a small group. So I was kind of the kid that I had friends who were in the popular group. And then I had kids who were my friends who were kind of nerdy and theater kids. And I pretty much liked all kinds of people. And looking
mhm,
back, I see that as a strength, you know, rather than being scared to branch out. But then at the
right.
same time, I was so consumed with whether or not the cool kids liked me. And like
Mm,
looking back again, you know, I'm sure that started from when I was young. And so I, a lot of times, would just paralyze myself in fear of what I wore or what I said or who I sat with at lunch
mhm,
or who I hung out with at the dance or whatever it is. But I did form really good, deep friendships with a core group of girls who I'm still friends with today. We still meet for, you know, Mexican food and margaritas, and they're great girls. And just those true people who just, and I think we all kind of identified with each other, and we all kind of
mm,
felt that wanting to belong to the mass group, but then wanting
mm,
our own identities too. So kind of that in
mhm,
between struggle. And then, so I had, you know, that group of friends. And then as I graduated, I had a school counselor actually who told me not to apply for college. Although I was on the honor roll, he just didn't think I was cut out for it and told
wow.
me like flat out not to go. And then I had a geometry teacher who told me that I'd be better off working at McDonald's than going to college. And I just feel like I just would, as a teacher, never say that. Never say that to a kid. I do the opposite, and most teachers do today. And those were other things that just kind of shook me and
So was
kind of
this in the
added to,
80s that they were telling you this?
yeah, in early 90s. And
Wow.
so, yeah, like don't apply. And then my dad, my biological dad, tried to convince me. I remember sitting in his car. He tried to convince me to wait a year and to get a job and to do other things and just see how things go. And I remember again, like at that moment, I just had this drive in me where I was like, no, I need to go. And so I went to school. I like fought for myself to go to school. And so I
Good
went
for you.
and took my core classes. Thank you. And I didn't even know I wanted to be a teacher. Honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to be. And
So you didn't have a
my
declared major going into
dad,
college.
no. And that was my dad's, I think his biggest hang up with me going to school. He wanted me to have a major, and he was a sociology major. So I think he just wanted me to declare it. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So all along the way, even I had adults who were kind of, even though I had it, like I said, supportive family and great parents, I had these moments that people were doubting me. And I think we all have those. And you just have to fight for yourself to prove that you can do it.
Right. That's a crazy story. You were told by 3 very influential people that you don't need to further your education. And, we think about that, and, this was the late 80s, early 90s. You think, that didn't happen then. That happened in the 50s and 60s, but, I think for young women, I think it did happen a lot, looking back. And it's such a shame that has happened in the past, and probably to some degree still goes on today.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
So
think, and
go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. I just was thinking, I think it's more the opposite of people encouraging girls, but maybe I'm biased because that's really my main passion. So,
Yeah, right.
But I don't, I don't know of people who have discouraged girls, but at the same time, are they being more encouraged? I don't know. I don't know beyond my reach what's really happening. It could still be happening, but I know a lot of teachers, and I really have never met a teacher who would be discouraging to a kid. So I think teaching has improved so much in that, positive building and relationships and all that.
Yeah, no, I have multiple people in my family that are in education, all the way up to administration education, and I don't see that side from what they tell me.
Yes.
In fact, it seems like girls these days are at the top of the class. They're salutatorians, valedictorians, they're top athletes, and and top in academics, and they're just excelling. And I think it's due to the environment that we've created since that era that happened to you. So and thanks to passion, the passion of people like yours, for making sure that doesn't happen to somebody else. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And I think parents are more intentional now about things too, especially with girls. They're trying to be, at least.
So obviously in our overcomer segments, for those that are listening, we focus on exceptional people who've overcome big obstacles, some seemingly insurmountable obstacles. And I'd have to say this would be one of those seemingly insurmountable obstacles. I'm a child of the 80s, and even though I was not a female, very similar story. I wasn't told that I couldn't go to college. I was just told that if you want to go to college, you're going to have to make your own way. You're going to have to figure it out because we don't have the money to do it. You might want to work for a year and then try to figure it out. And I was like you. I was like dead determined. I was like, no. I'm not going to settle for that. And and that determination I think it comes partly from our environment. Even though some of our environment's not that supportive, but I think it does come from our environment, both internal and external, and we push ourselves. So
I agree.
love that. Love your story.
Thanks.
So fast forwarding into adulthood, you're in college. How long did it take you to figure out that education was it? That's what I wanted to do.
My first year.
Wow.
It's so funny. They had a test that you could take on the computer. And I remember we had to go to a computer lab. This is back, in the like 94. So we had to go to the computer lab, and there was a test that showed you what your proficiency was in a certain area and what you were most likely, matched for in a degree. Because I really, after my first year, I panicked a little because my dad was so adamant about me choosing a major that I didn't know any more than I did when I had started. And so I took the test, and it came up like 98% teacher. And then dietitian, I think, was the second thing. And then who knows what the third was. But I had a moment that day where I thought, I think I do want to be a teacher. And so I remember calling my mom or going home. Maybe I didn't even have a cell phone at that time. Probably not.
No.
And I told her, and she said, Melissa, I've always known that you would be a teacher. And I said, why didn't you tell me? Or how did you know? And she said, well, I wanted you to figure it out for yourself. And I didn't want to make the decision for you. And also, you used to line up your stuffed animals. And I remember this corner desk I had. And so I would do like makeshift lessons, and my coloring books in my old playhouse. I used to write kids' names on the outside of them and make my dog go in there with me. So like there were signs along the way. And I was always kind of drawn to the outsider in school. I remember this girl one time, she had an accident in her pants. I still remember it. And it was in first or second grade. And she was so embarrassed. And she was hiding in the coat closet. And the other kids were kind of staring at her. And maybe there's a little chuckling. So I went over and reached out and just had a moment with her where I was helping her and ensuring that she was going to be okay. And so I've always had kind of that compassion of going to the kid who needs help, and all kids, but obviously just noticing when someone is needing a little extra. And I think it started way back.
Right. Right. So when you graduated college, what did your dad say? I'm just curious.
Not much. He just said he was proud of me, and that was about it. He was very straightforward about it. And I have a more formal relationship with my biological dad. My stepdad is the one who passed of cancer, who raised me. And although I had a good relationship with my biological dad, we have a very formal relationship, even though we joke around. So it sounds strange, but we joke, but it's also very formal. And so it's a little bit of a barrier there. So I don't know. So he just told me he was proud of me, and I said thank you, and that was kind of it. So it was there wasn't really a moment where he's like, I'm glad that you didn't listen to me, and maybe that would have been really empowering for me to hear him say that. But I was always too afraid.
What was your stepdad's take?
Oh my gosh, he would like dance on a table. He was so proud of me.
So you guys were super close.
Yes, very close. Yeah. I would talk to him. We would shoot baskets in the driveway, and I would talk to him about things. And he would play with me, growing up, play blocks or make my stuffed animals talk to me to make me laugh. And he would go on any roller coaster with me. I had all the moments with him. And like I said, it was just a very different relationship. And so when he passed, it was a very big trauma for me.
How long ago was it that he passed?
3 years.
Wow. Okay. So it's been very recent.
Yeah. So and it was a shock for us. We had no idea that he had glioblastoma, like no clue at all. And he was just, looking back, he was acting out of character. He thought he had a sinus infection. and his sisters live in Florida. And so he loved Florida, and he loved to drive. He was actually a truck driver.
Mm.
And he decided that he just needed a break from the Indiana weather. It was in February, right before the Super Bowl. And he just decided to drive down to Florida. And we had no idea that he had an orange-sized tumor in his brain
Oh,
until that weekend. And then that was when everything changed.
wow. Um, how long did he live after diagnosis?
He did really well. 2 years he went through treatment.
Mm.
So yeah, so we went through. He was doing I can't remember what it's called, but he had these. It was like an array that he wore like on his
Right,
head, and it was a new treatment that was doing really
right.
well in Europe, and he was responding really well to it, along with radiation and chemo.
Hmm.
And then he had this weird growth on his leg, and they took it out, and like he went downhill after that. It was a very
Oh.
strange just reaction to a very simple procedure after going through all of that,
So, I always say that out of our greatest struggles or obstacles come our greatest growth, and often our greatest passions. What did you learn from these obstacles that, as the title of the show is today, positive habits for
Yeah.
transformational living? What did you learn that transformed your life? Because in the pre-interview, you mentioned that it was from these things that, it taught you how to live positively and really transformed who you are. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, it did completely. So I would say that my dad's brain cancer was really when everything came to a head for me.
Mm.
And because it was such a shock to our family, and literally within him driving down to Florida, within 2 days, we were flying to Tampa, for him to have his surgery. But I just really stopped taking care of myself, and
Mm.
I gained a bunch of weight, and I was drinking a lot, and I guess I never thought that I would handle it like that, but I had those negative habits
Hmm.
that I was doing, and like that negative self-talk. And then I remember one day I was shopping with my mom at Target, and we went in the dressing room, and those three-way mirrors that are so brutal, I was trying on something, and I just like finally saw myself and what I was doing. And that was another just turning point for me. And I
Mm.
decided I want to do something about it. So I found a group online that was Danette May is a nutritionist, and she's really about mindful workouts and mindful eating. And
Mm.
she combines affirmations with the eating and with the movement and
Mm.
with meditation as well. And so I didn't realize, but by me signing up for this and making a huge change in my nutrition and handling, like making that a priority instead of doing the opposite, which wasn't helping the situation with my
Mhm.
dad at all, she really taught me about personal growth. And
Mm.
then I started from there building these incredible habits. I was meal prepping, and her big thing was you don't have to work out for an hour and a half a day. Like her workouts were very intentional, always had an affirmation with it. And 15 minutes, literally, I changed my entire body 15 minutes a day. And I
Mm.
changed my thinking. I put sticky notes on my mirrors about, that I could do hard things, and to focus on the good, and to just really rewire my whole thinking. And I
Mm.
think because I was finding so much success with the way that my body changed, because I lost 50 pounds, and I still can't believe I was 50 pounds heavier. Like it still blows me away looking at
Mm.
pictures, but because you don't realize it until you see the pictures, or the three-way mirror.
Mm.
But looking
Mhm.
back, I think I was so desperate for something good. And I was so just craving what I had never really had, which was that self-belief.
Mm.
And just in learning those little mind hacks of, what are 3 things I'm grateful for right now? Or stopping a spiral, a negative spiral. If I started doing the self-doubt, she taught us like just have a signal, stop, flip. So I would stop the thought and I would flip it to something I was grateful for, something that was going well. Or even when I was losing weight, I would look in the mirror and I would try and find something about myself that still wasn't good enough. And then I slowly rewired myself to be like, no, you do have, great arms right now, or you are getting, you are having progress and all of that. And so it's so funny because by doing that work while my dad was going through all of his treatments, it actually helped me handle it better when he passed. And I was in such a routine for meal prepping and knowing just how to take care of myself. And because I had been working all that time for 2 years on my mindset and on my just daily habits of having a good morning routine and drinking, lemon and vinegar water in the morning and, taking my dogs for a walk and just like doing those things. And even when my dad was in the hospital and hospice, instead of just sitting there, I would take breaks and I would walk the stairs, or I would bring my food there and, share it with him or whatever. And it really helped me just handle it so much better, even though it was still the hardest thing that I've ever gone through. But it's almost like I was healing myself along the way. And so I actually handled the grief, and everybody, as we know, handles grief differently. I handled it in a more positive mindset than I would have 2 years before.
That's crazy. So when, you said something that, I lacked that confidence in myself, and you had overcome so much just by, defeating those thoughts from people around you that you don't need to go to college. And so you would think that your confidence would have been stellar, because by this time, if he passed with cancer 3 years ago, you'd been teaching for a long time, so you had that proof. So there was something there in that grieving process that triggered that for you, where you just kind of slid downhill. So that's interesting how you, on your own, well, I mean, it sounds like you had a coach that kind of worked on the mindset and the eating, but you did a lot of that work on your own. A lot of people don't realize, I don't think, that even if you hire a coach, you have to implement. The hardest work to do is in the implementation. I mean, did she give you the exact affirmations to say, or did you come up with those on your own? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So every workout that you would do would have an affirmation. And so that would go with it. So there was an I'm abundant, I am peace. The I am peace one was always like a Pilates or something like that. But I think the habit of just seeing them and knowing just how the big impact it was having just on me telling myself the one that she gave me, it started a habit in me of making up my own and making visuals for myself and just almost chanting those in my head. And anytime, and I still do this today, anytime a negative thought, and it doesn't mean that I think everything's perfect or, everybody has obstacles and things that you work through, but it's like, when you have those things in place, it changes everything. And it really is about the consistency of doing it, because whether, like you said, whether or not you have a coach, you have to put in the work. And I think the hardest thing for people is just doing it every day, especially when you don't feel like it. But that's when you have to do it the most. Like today, I did not feel like going to my workout, but all I told myself was put your feet on the floor. And that's all I had to do. I put my feet on the floor and then I just said in my head, stand up. You can do this. And I know that sounds so cheesy and simple, but literally telling myself to put my feet on the floor and stand up and walk to the bathroom and get my butt, to my workout.
Get your workout clothes on. Just do one step at a time. Yeah.
Tie your shoes and just break it down one little baby step at a time. Because I sure felt like going back to bed today.
I hope people in the listening audience are hearing what you're saying, because what you're saying is gold. I don't know how long it took you to put the weight on. I don't know how long it took you to take it off. I can guarantee it took you longer to get it off than it did to put it on. But what MJ is saying here is that sometimes you literally have to break it down into the simplest steps. In other words, get your feet on the floor, Okay, walk to the bathroom, brush your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Mm-hmm.
go get dressed in your workout clothes. All right, now
Yes.
go grab your keys and a bottle of water,
Yes.
and let's go get in the car
Mm-hmm.
and literally
Yeah.
take it one step at a time. And you're right. People hear that on the surface and they think, oh, that's so stupid. But
Yeah.
it's not stupid at all. It's what we need when we don't have that coach standing there barking over our shoulder. We have to be
Mm-hmm.
our own coach. And that's what a coach does is they break it down step by step. That's
Yep.
brilliant, I think. And I hope
Thank you.
people in the listening audience really hear that. Because if for any obstacle in life, but for weight especially, and that is a difficult one to overcome. You're constantly looking in the mirror. There are mirrors everywhere. You're constantly
Yes.
reminded by the clothes that you're putting on. You're
Mm-hmm.
constantly reminded by um, people, not that you need to feed off of other people's, comments that, hey, you look like you're losing weight, but it
Mm-hmm.
helps. And
It
you may go
does.
for weeks or months and people don't say a thing about that.
Yep.
And you have to be self-motivated enough to take one step at a time. So
Yes. And
I
sometimes
think
it's
that's
one
brilliant.
snack at a time, one meal at a
Once
time, one
it,
snack at a time.
one snack at a time, one meal at a time. Talk about
Yeah.
that because we've talked
Yeah.
about the actual motion, getting up, moving, getting motivated to
Yes.
get out the door. Talk about how you applied that same principle to eating and snacking.
Yes. So I became a big meal prepper
Mm,
because for me, it was more about the decisions I was making and it was like I was having this fight within myself about whether I wanted the chips or whether I wanted the nuts and fruit or whatever. And so what I did was every Sunday for 2 hours, and I know people think 2 hours is too long, and I got
mm,
faster at it over time, but I literally would meal prep everything I was
mm,
going to eat for the week.
mm,
And what that did is it cut down on the decision making
mhm.
because I had 3 snacks to choose from. And some people might think that's pretty rigid, but that's what I needed at that time. I think when you're in the process of losing weight, you need a structure and you need
Yeah,
to not have to make all these decisions
yeah,
when you're hungry.
yeah,
Because it is sure easy to grab that bag of chips or the crackers and the cheese or whatever, when not that that's bad, because everyone's human, but it sure takes away from that temptation. And
right.
for me, I didn't mind the repetition. So what I would do is I would make small, just little trail mixes. And in the
Mhm,
beginning, I did measure things because it helped me with portion control and it helped me get a visual for what the portion looked like. Because even looking
right.
back in my childhood, my mom always struggled with her weight. She always went up and down with her weight, and portions were always a struggle for her. And
Mm,
although I didn't grow up really fighting my weight that much, actually I had the opposite problem. I always thought I was too big and I was really small, and I had almost like a warped sense of my body when I
mm,
was even tiny, and had this fear of being big, that probably rooted itself somewhere. And then I would just go kind of up and down throughout college, especially. I did the classic freshman 15. But fast forward to my big transformation, and you had mentioned it probably took me a long time. What's weird is 7 months. And
mm.
I think, I mean, that seems too fast. I think it's because the affirmation work and the mindset work I was doing with it, it
Wow.
was like between 7 and 9 months. It was less than a year. And I was just dropping it. And one thing that I would recommend to people, and one regret I do have is in the very beginning, and Danette always said, take pictures every month.
Mhm,
I was so ashamed of my body that first month. I didn't want to see my face in the picture. And
mm.
so I cropped out the top of my head and I just had my body. And I had the hardest time looking at those pictures. And
Mm,
then every month I had this fear that came up, like, what if I don't look any different? And
mm,
lo and behold, I took those pictures and I couldn't believe how much different I was in the
mm,
tone. And it wasn't even, like you said, it's the clothes, you're always comparing, like, oh, can I get in these jeans and whatever. And really, it's not about that. It's really just about how you feel about yourself and we don't all have to look the same. I mean, I know that's very basic too, but I think we get so hung up. You mentioned earlier comparison. It's like, especially social media, you can easily scroll through someone's feed and, wish that your body looked like theirs or whatever it may be. If we're talking wellness, and they're like posting their shake and, doing all this stuff. And you're like, she makes it look so easy. And really, it's just putting in the work consistently, just day by day. And for me, doing the meal prepping and learning the recipes that were delicious, but also good for you. And I stopped counting calories. And I think that was important because I used to be really hung up on calories. How many calories is this? And doing the 100 calorie snacks and all this. And what I learned was, no, you just need like good fat, and you need to eat, the nuts, and you need to eat the avocado, and those are and the hummus, and those are the things that fill you up. You just need to figure out and not be afraid to try things and just be like, all right, what is my thing? Okay, these are my favorite snacks. This week I'm going to do hard-boiled eggs and cherry tomatoes with salt and pepper. I know that sounds weird, but it's like a great snack, and it fills you up. And I would just mix it up and just make snacks that I liked, and then grab and go. And it was gold for me, because even when my dad was in the hospital, I would grab that and just take it with me even.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. The two things that you just said, the simplicity of your snacks, because I think people try to make it way too complex. You don't really have to calorie count if you're eating quality food. And the second thing is what you just said. You carried your snacks with you when your dad was in the hospital. Because that was going to be a question I was going to ask, just for clarification, because I know there are people out there listening to this and there was like, oh, there's no way I could do like MJ and have a relative in the hospital. I would just go down to the cafeteria. I wouldn't have time to prep. I would just go down to the cafeteria and eat hospital cafeteria food. For those of you guys who don't know and have never worked in a hospital, I've worked in a hospital before, trained in a hospital. It is some of the most unhealthy food you can ever put in your body. So to hear MJ saying that she carried her prepped food with her into the hospital, not only saved her life, but helped her rapidly lose that weight in 7 months. So it does take that level of discipline and focus. I think it's a focus issue. So kudos to you for making that happen, because most people would have just eaten the cafeteria food from the hospital.
Yeah. And I think it was almost a comfort for me, because I was so in the routine of meal prepping that it was something I could count on. And it was something that I knew I was good at. And it was a certainty that I knew exactly how to make my food. And it's funny because all of that led up to even my dad being in hospice. And so I already had that down. And so it wasn't even an issue for me.
Wow. And I don't think,
that.
I don't think people in the listening audience realize what you just said. It was a comfort to me, because I think the excuse that we hear a lot of times when people struggle with weight was, I'll eat the cafeteria food because it's comfort food. And like hamburgers and French fries and the unhealthy stuff. And what you're saying is, you literally, in psychology, we call that reframing. You reframed that, and it was a comfort for you to eat something that you had control over and put something in your body that you had control over. Absolutely love that. And people out there listening to this need to pay really close attention to this, because the concept of reframing that MJ just gave you was exactly that. It's powerful. And it allowed her to maintain the power and control over a bad situation, and still move through and keep her sanity and keep her health. So again, I love it. Love it. Love it.
Thank you. It was a lifesaver. And my dad even tried to eat my food. He would we would sit on the side of his bed, and I was eating a Lara bar, and it was a cherry pie one, and I only eat the ones that have 3 ingredients or less, just because I know those are better for you. And it's just about making little choices like that, even with bars. But I remember he was like, I like cherry pie. I'm like, Dad, It just tastes a little different than like regular cherry pie. And so I'll just never forget him eating it on the side of his hospital bed and like making his face. So, I mean, we had the cute little moments of that too.
Yeah.
My dad was always doing push-ups. It was kind of like his thing. In the morning and at bed, he always did 30 push-ups. And so kind of a tribute to him, I started getting really into doing push-ups, and
Wow.
and we would always like flex our muscle. Like we'd always do this to each other. And so that's like our little kind of like a Carol Burnett moment where, you know, she tugged on her ear. That was kind of mine with my dad. And that again is that connection with feeling strong. And he always modeled that for me. And he always ate great, ate flaxseed on his oatmeal, and took, just all the things, and fish oil, and just did all the supplements and everything. So it was kind of a sad moment. We were sitting on the side of the bed a different time in Tampa, actually. And he was just like pondering something. I'm like, Dad, what are you thinking about? And he's like, I just don't know what I did wrong. Was it the toothpaste I used? He was like going through this list of things, like almost blaming himself. And so we like did some mindset work there together. I just assured him that obviously it was out of his control and nothing that he had done. And so we kind of reframed that and in that moment. And my dad was always such a positive person, and that's why it's such a tribute to him too, that my girls organization came from all of this, because it's when after all that happened that I had this big aha of, oh my gosh, I've been seeing this for years with girls, that they need just extra help with building their confidence and with feeling like they're enough and feeling seen and having positive, healthy friendships, and even knowing how to eat. And we started talking about nutrition even.
Yeah.
And just choices they would make at the lunch. You know, it's kind
And
of like
knowing
a
how to
cafeteria
give
food,
positive self-affirmation.
Yes. And how they talk to themselves. And so I started testing it out at lunch and recess time, and a couple of days a week, and they loved it, and it took off. And so it was a nice side effect of the pain that I was in. And not only was I going through my own healing, but I also had this toolkit of good habits that were so ingrained in me by that time that it felt very natural to start teaching that to the girls. And so that's how it all started.
Yeah. I mean, I can see the, just the natural path of your progression from childhood all the way through your adulthood, and the obstacles that you overcame, and the organization that you formed out of that. That's a really, really, really good journey, full of enlightenment, full of nuggets along the way that I think that are universal, that anybody can take and use. Just out of curiosity, I know we've been talking a lot about weight loss, but we've been talking about principles. Really, are with these principles that you've learned, have you been able to apply them in any other area of your life? We're gonna bring you back, and we're gonna talk more about your organization. But I'm just curious if there are any other areas of your life where you've been able to apply these principles.
All throughout my life.
All throughout,
I think, yes, I think in starting a business, I've had to apply the positive affirmations, and dealing with comparison, and teaching myself things that I didn't know, and just knowing how to pivot and how to adjust and how to take those habits and apply it to other parts of my life. From my relationship with my husband to my relationship with my son. And, you know, parenting a boy is unique in itself, especially a middle school boy. And so I have to do a lot of mindset work with him, with myself, and having my relationship with him. And just, we have chickens, and my husband got really into homesteading. And so even he got on board with the idea of what we put in our bodies and how important that is. During the pandemic, he got really interested in homesteading. And so it's funny because he used to tease me about how he just talked about how strict I was about in the beginning, because I had to be strict, or because I had failed quote unquote, all the other, diets or whatever that I had tried. And this is the first thing that ever stuck. So then I was just very committed because I saw it working, and I didn't give up at the point that I normally did, which is about 10 pounds in of losing. But fast forward, he got really into homesteading, and the chickens that we have, we know what they eat. They eat organic food. They're free range. We know exactly where our food's coming from. And so he got really interested in that. So it's almost like the principles transferred even to him. And being a police officer, it especially has been healing for him because, in our family, because, he's dealt with a lot, especially over the last year, of just his own mindset that he's had to work on. And so he wouldn't admit it, but I think that the principles have applied to him as well. And my son, he eavesdrops a little bit on my mindset work and things. And I know that he's internalizing it. And I think that's really, really key, is that you just have to keep doing scary things. To me, it's every day I have to push myself to do something that's uncomfortable. And whether it's with food, or it's with doing a workout, or if it's writing a pitch for media, or learning about a marketing strategy, or, being an achiever. And I know your audience is full of high achieving people. It's almost like an addiction, because it's like you do one thing and then you go on to the next and the next and the next. And so what I've been working really hard on lately is setting boundaries with myself. And that's a new principle that I'm having to really internalize. And it's probably my biggest struggle right now, because it's very blurry. And because I am still teaching full time and running my small business and maintaining my health and trying to keep, everything in check, I don't believe that true balance is ever achievable. I believe that you prioritize different parts of your life at different times, because there are times when my son takes my more priority, and I have to tell myself not to feel guilty about my teaching or my business or whatever else taking a back seat for a second. And then it just kind of rotates. So that's what I found, because I was beating myself up so much at, balance, work-life balance, and being an achiever too. It's like a torture if you try and have that mindset. When am I going to be balanced? And to me, you never will. You're just always kind of shifting things around, and setting boundaries for me is the best thing that I can do right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Everybody views balance as this fixed and concrete concept, and it's not. It's so fluid. I think I envision one of those, those things out of 70s and 80s, those wave machines, where it's just this wave of colored water moving through this thing. And that's what balance is, because it's imperfect balance. But at some point, there may be more water on this end than there's on this end. But it's still in balance. It's in synchronicity. And and I think that rhythm, that synchronicity that you're talking about is critical for people to understand that what looks like balance today may not look like balance tomorrow, but it's still balance. And finding that sweet spot where we can maintain our health and maintain our sanity and take care of those that we loved. That love is the critical, hinge point, I think. But
it is. And for me too, it's like forgiving yourself for a bad day, because yesterday I ate some chips. I had some, Girl Scout cookies that were in my freezer. And so even though I'm maintaining my weight and I'm still human, and what I used to do in the past before my transformation, I would just have this extreme guilt and
shame and guilt.
Shame. Oh my gosh, I would torture myself for eating those, those cookies. And last night, we keep the Thin Mints in the freezer because that's the way to eat them, because they're delicious that way. I ate this, this stack like this. I'm like, well, all right, that happened. I'm not going to do that tomorrow. So it's like forgiving yourself. Okay, all right, I ate some jalapeno chips, with my tacos tonight. Okay, I'm just not going to do that tomorrow, or I'm going to set a different goal. I'm going to try and eat more greens tomorrow, or, oh, I didn't do that great on my water today, so I'm going to drink more tomorrow, or for the next meal, because I think sometimes people too, in different parts of life as well, but it's like you make one mistake and then you just throw it out the window. And it's like, oh, forget it. I didn't do this, or I ate those chips at lunch, so I might as well eat the burger and fries, or I might as well just not work out for the rest of the week. Or like I got in a funk last week and I had worked out like one day. And that to me, I was like, all right, Melissa, like I had to do the whole thing in my head. Like, all right, you've got to get back. You've got it. It's 1 week. Your whole body is not going to change. In 1 week, you're fine.
Right.
You know, and so I went through this whole dialogue in my mind, not only just about working out and food, but do that all the time. Like, all right, that pitch didn't get accepted. Okay, it's not the right time, or whatever it is. Like, all right, move on. You know, and it's like, I heard a podcast today, Lori Harder mentioned just failing fast. And I know Pixar, that's their philosophy, like fail fast. Because I think we're so afraid of failing in some aspect of our life that it paralyzes us. And so then we're afraid to take those chances, or we mess up. I was like, oh, see, I knew I couldn't do it. Oh, I'm just not meant to do this. And it's like, nope, you got to stop that cycle. And to me, that's a principle that just bleeds throughout your entire life.
And that's where the affirmations come in. It's just being able to positively talk yourself through that. And then the baby steps, one step at a time.
Yes.
You know, I often say that whether it's weight loss or alcohol and drugs, or it's business I always say people fall off the cart, but some people fall off the cart and crawl into the Grand Canyon. The principles are still the same. If you're in the Grand Canyon, you got a little bit further to go to get back up on the cart, but the principles are the same. One step at a time. Don't beat yourself up. Don't shame yourself to death. Let's just get back on the cart and proceed on down the road. But you're spot on. Spot on there.
It's how I have to live, or I'll drive myself crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I always love ending the show with a fun question. What are some interesting or weird traditions that your family has that you'd be willing to share?
Okay, one came to mind right away. So every time, this is just a quick one, every time we cross a state line, if we're traveling, we have to jump over the line. So we all lift our feet up off the air and we go, we're in whatever. And then so we're like, we're in Ohio, we're in, you know, whatever it is. And like we jump over the state line. That's kind of a weird thing. And my family has always called each other on the birthday and do like a full happy birthday song. And like with all the extras, like all the, you know, and many more on Channel 4, like all the childhood things that everybody says, like my family's always done that. That's been a tradition. I have all kinds of weird things. We have
awesome.
chickens for one thing, but they're like our pets and we carry them around.
I think I hear a rooster in the background.
Yes. I've almost said that at the beginning of the interview. Like literally we have 3 roosters. So you're going to hear that.
I love them. I love them.
Yeah. They're
Melissa,
awesome.
What a tremendous story of overcoming some big hurdles and turning those into something that, you know, can radically change lives. And like I said, we're going to bring you back in a future segment. We're going to talk more about that radical changing life portion. But as far as transformational living, I mean, you gave us some amazing wisdom and nuggets for whether it's health, transformation in your health, or transformation in your business, or just life in general. Thank you so much. It was an honor and pleasure to have you on the show here today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it just feels good to share those things with others. And I just hope it helps someone.
Definitely. There's so much power in stories, and thank you for being willing to share yours today.
Yes, my pleasure.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, I'd like to make the listeners aware of something. We're starting. I'm starting a new boot camp, and the boot camp is going to be called the Gene Hack Boot Camp. In that boot camp, it's a free 5-day boot camp. I'm going to be teaching you my 5-zone theory of human reaction to our environments, both internal and external. And in the 5-zone theory, you're going to know exactly which areas need to be focused on first in order to reach those higher levels of achievement. But I've also paired, and this comes through years of working with this, I've also been able to pair nutrigenomics with that model. And with each of those zones, and you'll be able to prioritize those zones, and you're going to be able to know exactly which genes need to be tested within those zones in order to help you maintain peak performance and stay at a higher level of achievement. If you're not at a higher level of achievement already and you're feeling a little draggy, which can sometimes happen over 40, it's going to help you get back there tremendously. I can tell you case study after case study where we've actually done this, where we start with genetics first, and within 2 to 4 weeks, people are seeing tremendous difference, as much as 65 to 75% improvement. And within the next coming 4 weeks after that, they're seeing as much as 100% resolution in things like brain fog and low energy, mood issues and things, anxiety issues and things like that. So you're not going to want to miss this boot camp. If you want more information about it, we're still working on getting the web page up at this point, but you can message me. You can direct message me on Instagram or Facebook at Dr. Brian G. Brown if you want to be put on an early notification list. And other than that, we'd love to answer any questions that you have. You can go to drbriangbrown.com/question, click the button right in the middle of the page and submit your question. I'll answer any question about the upcoming boot camp. So that wraps it up for today. Tune in tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time for my In the Zone segment, where I'll be recapping today's interview with MJ. I'll be sharing how the nuggets that MJ shared with us in this interview fit into the Genesis Zone Advantage. I'll be answering any questions and exploring other relevant current event topics related to peak performance. Most informed, most trusted, and most gracious, you spent this time with us today. Until next time, stay in the zone. I'm Dr. Brian Brown.